Mueller wants to prove he's nonpartisan. He should finish his report ahead of the midterm elections. CNN White House reporter Sarah Westwood joins me right now. So, Sarah, the president clearly is upset.
That's right, Fred. President Trump has spent this morning fuming over the Russia investigation, and he's facing yet another legal complication after enduring a week of them. His former doorman, Dino Sajudin, is claiming to have knowledge of an affair President Trump had years ago with his former housekeeper. Sajudin's now claiming that that relationship produced a child. And although we first heard about the existence of these allegations back in April, we're only just now learning details of this alleged affair because Sajudin is now released from a confidentiality agreement of sorts that he entered into with the parent company of the national acquirer. That's the American Media Inc., headed by David Pecker, a personal friend of Trump. Pecker was recently granted immunity in the Mueller investigation. That's obviously something that could add yet another wrinkle to the troubles that President Trump is facing on the legal front, as Trump and Pecker were good friends. And the implication of this development is perhaps more important than the allegations itself, because it raises the question of how many other people with damaging allegations against Trump were paid by AMI in 2016. We now know of 3 different individuals who were paid to suppress their damaging allegations against Trump during the 2016 election. 2 of those stories, Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney, was directly related to and admitted to prosecutors that he helped pay those women during the 2016 election. Fred?
Sarah Westwood at the White House, thanks so much. So this feud between President Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions, well, it's escalating. The president now responding to Sessions' pushback this week that the Department of Justice will not be influenced by politics. Trump writing this. Jeff Sessions said he would not allow politics to influence him only because he doesn't understand what is happening underneath his command position. Highly conflicted Bob Mueller and his gang of 17 angry Dems are having a field day as real corruption goes untouched. No collusion. CNN politics reporter Jeremy Herb joining us right now. So this feud escalating this week. What does the future hold potentially for Sessions?
Yeah, I think the latest attacks, the escalating attacks that we have seen from the president this week show he would like to get rid of his attorney general. Politically, though, for now, it's not a real plausible scenario. And that's because if this president were to fire Sessions, it would be the Senate that would have to confirm his replacement, or else Rod Rosenstein, who appointed special counsel Robert Mueller, would be in charge. Now, we asked the senators, Republican senators, again this week following these latest attacks, you know, do you support Sessions? Would you be able to confirm a new nominee? And many key Republicans said no, we could not confirm anyone to replace Sessions if he were to be fired in this climate. But there have been some key defections from that. Notably, Lindsey Graham, one of the president's defenders, said that after the midterms he could see a scenario where it would be acceptable for the president to bring in a new attorney general. So I think that's a shift now that we're going to watch to see where Sessions' fate lands.
Yeah, that was a big shift in just, a few months' time. So the president, threatened once again this morning that he may at some point have to get involved with the FBI. And we've heard this several times over the past few months. Here's what he said on his angry rant to Fox News back in April.
And you look at the corruption at the top of the FBI, it's a disgrace. And our Justice Department, which I try and stay away from, but at some point I won't.
And then 1 month later, he made a similar threat about the Justice Department, saying, and I'm quoting now, at some point I will have no choice but to use the powers granted to the presidency and get involved. And then in June, he wrote, I have tried to stay uninvolved with the Department of Justice and FBI, although I do not legally have to. What is he, I guess, signposting here?
Right. We keep hearing at some point that he's going to take this action or that he could take this action. And the question, of course, is where is that line? This week we saw the investigation get closer and closer to the president. We had the guilty verdict against Paul Manafort, the guilty plea, even more notably from his former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. And so far we haven't seen him take any actions beyond these comments and beyond these tweets, but it's absolutely something that everyone, I think, in Washington is watching for. We have heard from Republicans, that say that if he were to do this, it could be a threat to his presidency, the potential impeachment for obstruction of justice. But until he takes those steps, it is still just a hypothetical question.
All right, Jeremy Herb, thanks so much. All right, let's talk a little bit more about this. Former U.S. Attorney Greg Brower with me now, and former Associate White House Counsel under George W. Bush administration, Jamil Jaffer. Good to see you both. All right, so Greg, you first, CNN is reporting the president is fuming over his feud with Sessions, but he's worried about Mueller's reaction if he were to fire Sessions. So what would be some of the possible problems if the president were to fire Sessions?
Yeah, the potential problems with the president firing the attorney general are too numerous to mention in a few minutes on the air here today. His recent rants really are bizarre, and I will tell you this: I've worked with the attorney general, with the deputy attorney general, with the FBI director. And I would tell you two things I know for sure about those three men. One is that they are absolutely committed to defending the integrity of the Department of Justice and protecting it against attacks like this. And secondly, they are also absolutely committed to defending and upholding the rule of law. And so I think what we saw this week from the Attorney General was a commitment to that, and I have no doubt that he will continue, as will Rod Rosenstein and Chris Wray, to push back on any efforts at interjecting politics into what the DOJ and FBI do.
So, Jamil, while the president may want to get rid of the problem, and the problem is Sessions, that would only bring on a bigger problem, no?
No, I think that's exactly right, Frederica. I mean, the problem here is that the president has complete control of the Justice Department. If he wanted to fire Jeff Sessions, he could, but he knows politically it's not viable, and so he's sitting out there almost like a 13-year-old kid tweeting at him, attacking him, undermining the Justice Department, undermining all these terrific career prosecutors. I mean, look, Jeff Sessions, Noel Francisco, Rod Rosenstein, Brian Benchkowski, these are all conservatives, and the president's going after Jeff Sessions by name. I mean, it's outrageous.
Right, but he keeps doing it, and it seems like it's the prelude to something else, perhaps, Greg. I mean, Jeff Sessions doesn't appear as though he's going to just quit. So, I mean, what is the goal for the president if he's not going to, eliminate him? Is it just to kind of get a consensus out there?
Well, as Jamil said, the president has the power to fire all of the individuals that Jamil just listed. And the fact that the president doesn't, I guess, suggests that either he doesn't have the guts to do so, and or he is simply trying to play to his base and prepare the battlefield, if you will, to be able to criticize whatever comes out of the Mueller investigation when it is finally completed. But it is unprecedented, to say the least, for the chief executive to do this sort of, engage in this sort of criticism of his top DOJ and FBI leaders. It makes no sense.
At the same time, we've seen sort of an evolution, of some consensus, namely Senator Lindsey Graham, who last year said, if Sessions were removed, there would be holy hell to pay. I'm quoting him. But now he's saying something very different. Listen.
Clearly, Attorney General Sessions doesn't have the competence of the president. That's an important office in the country, and after the election, I think there will be some serious discussions about a new Attorney General.
So, Jamil, what's different?
Well, look, obviously Senator Graham is right. The president can and should have an attorney general he can rely upon and trust. He's one of his closest advisors. That being said, you can't go after the attorney general because you don't like how the investigation is going. Every time the president has gone after Jeff Sessions is because some bad news for him has broken in this investigation, and that's what makes it problematic for the president.
Greg?
Yeah, this was surprising to hear from Senator Graham, who's friendly with the Attorney General. I've heard that Senator Graham is now trying to walk it back in some sense by saying, well, look, I'm simply saying these things to try to talk the president down from taking action right now. But of course, with friends like that, who needs enemies, right? It was a very surprising turn of events.
And now you've got two close Trump allies who have been granted immunity to talk. And, one would wonder, Jamil, what's the immunity? I mean, what would, these folks have to hide or protect themselves from in order to get immunity in exchange for information that investigators want?
Well, look, with the Michael Cohen plea deal, clearly the Justice Department has shown that they think they can bring charges against somebody for improper campaign contributions based on these payoffs. And so David Pecker may feel like he's got some potential liability if he doesn't cooperate. So that's with respect to him. With respect to the CFO of the Trump organization, who just appears to have been given immunity also, that obviously he was deep in the finances. So if there's a problem in the finances, he's right in the middle of it. So if he's looking to protect himself, that's obviously going to be a challenge for the president also going forward.
And Greg, I'm namely talking about Weisselberg, and Pecker, since they're the latest, and they are also both very close to the president long term. What would the president's worries be now?
Well, he should be very worried in my experience. These are two men who know an awful lot about the president's business and other activities over the last decades. And the fact that they've been immunized now means that they will be compelled to testify, have every incentive to testify and share what they know with the government. And that cannot be a positive development for the president and his inner circle.
And to be immunized doesn't mean it's a fishing expedition. These investigators already know or have great value in these two characters before even extending immunity, right?
Yeah, typically the way it works is the investigators will believe that these witnesses have something to offer. Good defense counsel for these witnesses will tell the government, look, happy to cooperate, but we need immunity. Even if it's not clear that their clients would necessarily be charged with anything, as I said, good defense counsel will want to line up immunity agreements so as to free their clients to be able to fully cooperate with the government. And if the government isn't interested in charging them anyways, it's a free thing for the government to offer. So it benefits both sides and will certainly help the investigation.
All right, Greg Brower, Jamil Jaffer, good to see you both. Thanks so much. All right, still ahead, some of the president's closest confidants flip on him. So are some anchors on his favorite news channel. And the Pope making a historic visit to Ireland, a country with one of the highest Catholic populations in the world, but the visit is overshadowed